What's up everyone, I am the Kaiju no Kami, and today I thought I'd do a nice little clipless video on some of my favorite adaptations of A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol is my favorite book. I read it in 7th grade and I have loved it ever since. I got to see A Christmas Carol in play form at one point. I have watched the movies over and over again, many adaptations. Although there are like over 100 adaptations between movies, TV specials, plays, and all the like, so I have not seen every version. For the most part, I'm going to go over the ones that I own because I watch them almost every year or every other year. Although there are a couple versions that I really love, but I don't own them because they never came out to Blu-ray. One of those versions being the Patrick Stewart version, which I'll get into a little bit later on. One thing I will say that I find interesting about all the different adaptations of A Christmas Carol is that some of the movies have things from the books in them, and some things that were not in the books, and every adaptation seems to add their own original scenes into it and then take out scenes that were in the book for one reason or another. I'm not exactly sure why, that's just the way it is. There are many good or bad versions, especially that recent FX BBC bullshit that came out last year that was such a travesty. I did a quick review on it and people got pissed off because I absolutely hated it. Now I will say I did specifically make one little error. I said that Scrooge raped Mrs. Cratchit, but they don't actually show the rape. She gets undressed, but then it has like this weird cut where he tells her to get out. So from my perspective, it was they just cut out him actually raping her and had her leaving. But apparently it's not that she was raped, but rather he just had her undressed and then told her to get out. It's still sexual harassment either way, so it doesn't really matter if it's rape or not. It's basically unredeemable. He just did something that can never heal his character, but it doesn't matter. That movie was garbage. Even though it is the only version to actually include Alibaba and the miners for some reason. I'm not sure why that is exactly, but okay. Now, one of the versions I do really want to see, but I have not been able to do so yet, and every year I keep saying, okay, I'm going to finally pick this one up, and then I don't. It's the 1938 version. I keep saying I'm going to watch it this year. Don't. And then I was thinking about picking it up this year, but because I got 4K and everything, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to wait to see if someone remasters it in 4K before I watch it, because that would be the best way to see it for the first time. I've heard the 1938 version is spectacular. I can't say so for myself, and it's on my list of things to check out at some point. Although I had requested it from my local library, but there's a long request list for it, so I'm not getting it anytime soon, and by that point, I'm not going to care. Another thing I will say about the movies that is kind of weird to me is their casting choices for Scrooge. Sometimes they get a guy who plays Scrooge amazingly well on his mean side, but then he doesn't really do a good job with the redeemed side where I don't buy his redemption. Then we occasionally have the opposite side where the mean side feels really forced, but his redemption side feels like, oh my god, this feels natural for this guy. There's only been a couple actors I can say have been able to pull off both versions of Scrooge where they've done the mean side and the redeemed side, and that is 1951's Alastair Sim. This version is probably my favorite version of A Christmas Carol, even though it does add a lot of its original content into Scrooge's past when he's getting visited by the ghost of Christmas past and they see all this stuff going on, because it has a couple things from the book, but then not so much. For example, we get a scene where he meets Fozziwig's competitor for the first time. Then when he starts working for that guy, he meets Marley for the first time. There's a scene of Marley and him buying the company, basically. And then there's a scene of Scrooge's sister dying. They also changed his girlfriend's name from Belle to Alice for some reason. But then they took out other things that was kind of weird. Like they don't have the miner scene, the Alibaba scene. They don't have the scene of these people on the ship celebrating Christmas. So it's kind of weird that they took out all this stuff and then put in their own stuff into this when they could have just stuck with what the story had. But I guess that's just the nature of the beast. Everyone wants to put their own little tidbit in there. And they do add some extra scenes with Tiny Tim, which is kind of but you know what? It all works. It's a solid adaptation overall. It's atmospheric. Alastair Sim, as I said, is incredible as Scrooge. Everything just works so well. The movie's well paced that I don't mind some of the changes. And there are some things in here that I don't recall seeing in other versions. Like there is a scene where Scrooge is holding a toothpick and he's trying to get Marley's ghost to follow the toothpick, and Marley's just like, I don't recall that being in other adaptations, although maybe it is and I'm just not remembering them right now. Another version I liked is the George C. Scott version from the 80s that was a made-for-TV movie. George C. Scott looks a lot like Scrooge, and he does a really great job as the mean Scrooge, but this is the one case where I actually don't buy the redemption bit. I just don't know. Scott plays such a mean bastard so well. I'm kind of like, for the redemption, like, okay, I mean, it's cool. He's doing a great job, but I'm not 100% convinced he has totally changed his ways. Nevertheless, still a solid version overall. On the other hand, it is kind of weird. There are some effects done in this version that the 50s version did better, specifically revolving around Marley's ghost. Like in the 50s version, they actually show you all these other ghosts that are outside trying to help people there from the book. This one doesn't really do that, which is kind of strange. But there's a couple things that this version does that aren't in other adaptations. I'm also not sure if I'm 100% satisfied with David Warner's performance as Bob Cratchit. I love David Warner. I just don't feel like he was fit for Bob Cratchit. He just doesn't fully work. Now the next one on my list, I feel like people are a little bit more leaning to it because they grew up on the Muppets. Don't get me wrong, this is an incredible movie. It's a very well done adaptation, but it's not really remotely accurate to the book. It has things from the book. It's doing a kid-friendly version of the book, though, or a more dumbed-down version, I guess, outside of some parts. I really do like a lot of it. I love having the two critics as the Marley brothers instead of just Jacob Marley, so that was kind of interesting. However, Michael Caine, I thought, was a poor Scrooge. I don't buy his meanness. I don't buy him as being this selfish old man who doesn't care about anyone but himself or care anyone about money. I just feel like he's forced into the role. His redemption stuff is really well done at the end of the movie, but I just don't buy him being this mean-spirited old man who hates everything around him. That's the downside to it. There's also, again, a couple liberties I don't like. I don't really like that they kind of rendered Scrooge's nephew utterly pointless, because even though the beginning of the movie starts out the same, the ending just doesn't really work for me in that aspect. Overall, it's a really solid adaptation. I just feel people are more lenient towards this version because it's the Muppets. I didn't grow up on the Muppets really, so I don't have this blind nostalgia for the Muppets like other people do. I'm not saying the Muppets are bad or anything, but some people seem to think that the Muppets are the most amazing thing ever and anything they touch is gold. I'm not that way. I don't do that thing. I think it's cool if it's fun, but if not, if it doesn't work, I'm not going to give it pointers just because it's the Muppets. The next one I own on Blu-ray is the 2009 Jim Carrey version, which I really, really like. There are a few things that really irk me, though. I love how damn creepy they make it. They really try to keep up with all the imagery from the book into this movie. They try to keep a lot of the character models looking like how they looked in the book, or were described to look, or similar to how they looked in it. There are some aspects that don't work because they're trying to do all these 3D gimmicks, and I feel like it sacrificed the story, such as the stuff with the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. However, I do have to say that this might be my favorite version of the Ghost of Christmas Past, because all the other movies have not really done the Ghost of Christmas Past effectively. Like, I understand in the book, the Ghost of Christmas Past is meant to be like a light that sometimes looks old, but then looks like a child, but looks old again, and then is a light. However, they never really grasp that in the other movies. They either make it straight up an old man, they have a child, or a woman, or whatever. Where I feel like this one got it mostly right by having him look like a candle and be lighted like a candle. On the other hand, the eyes could have used some work. They're not as dead-eyed as that really bad Beowulf movie had, and it's a bit better than what Polar Express had. I still wish, though, that they would go back and kind of update the eyes, because the eyes just sometimes look a little lifeless. Other than that, though, this is a solid adaptation that does a lot of imagery right, and it can scare the crap out of people. When I saw this in theaters, we had kids screaming, and it was great, because that's exactly what A Christmas Carol should be doing. Another version I love that I do not own because it was not released on Blu-ray and the DVD looks like dog crap is the Patrick Stewart version from, I want to say, 1999. It's a solid adaptation. It's the only version to actually have the ship in it, where Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Present come onto a ship to see what all these sailors are doing on Christmas. That's the only movie adaptation I have seen that actually includes it, which is kind of annoying, but again, people like to throw in their own things. But I really like Patrick Stewart as Scrooge, even though I still feel like it's Patrick Stewart playing Scrooge. I'm not 100% convinced he's Scrooge because he just looks like Patrick Stewart. Scrooge is not supposed to be fully bald, but okay, whatever. They do so much right in that one, especially with all the imagery, and try to pull off everything effectively, that it works. I like it. I just wish they would release it in goddamn Blu-ray. Ugh. One final adaptation I love is not strictly a direct adaptation, just more based on, and that is Bill Murray's Scrooge. Technically speaking, I should hate this movie, but I don't. I really, really like it. It's got a great all-star cast in it. There's a lot of actors from Tales from the Crypt that show up in this thing that's pretty awesome. It basically takes the core concepts of A Christmas Carol, but then puts their own spin on everything by putting it in a modern-day setting with a TV producer. It's just a lot of fun overall, and it manages to actually get the point of the story, and it understands what A Christmas Carol was all about compared to that recent travesty I talked about earlier in this video. This one does it right. How the hell the other one did not do it right, I do not know. If you're tired of seeing direct adaptations of A Christmas Carol, Scrooge is the movie to watch because you'll probably find yourself enjoying this immensely. It is really, really fun and definitely worth watching. What is your favorite version of A Christmas Carol? Let me know in the comments. Click like, subscribe, the bell notification, whatever else YouTube has you clicking on to support me. You can support me on Patreon at Kaiju no Kami, Facebook Kaiju no Kami, Instagram Kaiju no Kami, Twitter Kaiju no Kami, and my website creativitybydesignllc.com. Until next time, bye.